Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and my channel is called Discerning What is True. How you guys doing today? Today is the third day of March 2024, and I'm going to be reading from Gerald Massey's work here. And the name of the book is simply called, get the work here the way I want it to do, The Ancient Egypt, the Light of the World. This is book 2, what we call totemism, tattoo, and FETISHISM as forms of sign language. So as I feel like this guy is well worth to read. Gerald Massey. I've done readings of Alvin Boyd Kuhn also. This is deeper ways of what happened long ago, trying to help people to find themselves spiritually here, which is what these guys were about. So we're going to begin the reading here, and thank you for listening, and I wish you a good day. With due search, we shall find that the unwritten and remotest part of primitive man is not immemorial after all that may have been lost by the way. Most obscured conditions have been more or less preserved and represented in the drama of primitive customs, in the mirror of mythology, and the sign language of totemism. Ceremonial rites were established as the means of memorizing facts in sign language when there were no written records of the human past. And I'll say this, it's kind of interesting what they're doing this. Is key for them to memorize this because simply is that if you wrote something on paper, there's always the opportunity of it being either lost or eventually rotting, so to speak, because they didn't have the method in some ways to preserve that unless it was kept in a certain temperature wise. And also simply is that people don't like to hear what you have to say, and if you have something that's written in a book, they'd rather, they would go ahead and burn it, you see. So this is why, I have books, but, there's no guarantee. It's only those that actually have ears to hear that actually have a desire for truth and a deeper truth about certain things. So that's why I do this. So in these, the knowledge was acted, the ritual was exhibited, and kept in ever-living memory by continual repetition. The mysteries, totem or religious, were founded on the basis of action. And also dancing, for example, was a mode of sign language in all the mysteries. To know certain mysteries implied the ability to dance them when they could not be otherwise expressed. The Bushmen say that the Manus deity Khan taught them the mysteries of dancing under the type of the, quote, praying manus, end quote, or the leaping grasshopper. Primitive men have observed the ways and works of nature and initiate all they might as means of thinking their meaning when they could not talk. They danced it with the grasshopper. They writhed and swelled and puffed it with the serpent. They panted it with the lion, roaring it with the hippopotamus, hummed it with the insects, and pawed and clicked it with the ape. In short, they acted in accordance with the example of their forerunners on the earth. They not only wore the skins of animals and feathers of birds, they made their motions and totem dances and imitated their cries as a primary means of making themselves understood. From the beginning, in the far-off misty morning of the past, dancing in the likeness of animals was a totem mode of demonstration. Amongst the earliest deities of Egypt are Apt and Bes, such to say, who issued forth from inner Africa as dancers in the act of dancing the mystery of the phallic dance, and in the skins of animals. The Arunta tribes of Central Australia dance the Unthipopol dance in the ceremony of young man making at the time of circumcision. This tells the story of the way they came in what is known as the, quote, range all along. This is based upon Spencer and Gilliam. native tribes of Central Australia in page 442. It is said to be the dance of the Ethiopia women in the Arakarinaka, who were being both sexes and who danced all the way, quote, until their organs were modified and they became as other women are, end quote. This denotes the status of the pre-Ptolemaic people who were as yet undivided by the Totemic rites of puberty, which are now illustrated in the mysteries of the dance. In the initiative ceremonies of the males, as described by Massey, Spencer, and Gilliam, page 381, a special dance of the women follows the making of the youth into a man who is now welcomed by them into the ranks of the elders. Quote, a number of young women come near. Each one is decorated with a double horseshoe-shaped band of white pipe clay, which extends across the front of each thigh and the base of the abdomen. A flexible stick is held behind the neck and one end grasped by each hand. Standing in a group, the women sway slightly from side to side, quibbling in a most remarkable fashion as they do so, the muscles of the thigh and the base of the abdomen, end quote. The object of the decoration and movement is evident. It is to incite the youths and prepare them for concubine. At this period of the ceremonies, a general interchange and lending of women also takes place. Well, this women's dance goes on night after night, perhaps 2 or 3 weeks, end quote. The men sing the Koro Bori song, end quote, while the women dance the mystery of young dash man making and show the object and mode of it. In this case, while white pipe clay was substituted for the white undoubted down with which the female was usually embellished. Here, the customs of the totem mysteries naturally suggest that a primary object in putting on fur and feather or down and dancing in the skin of the totem animal as the festival of puberty was dramatized the coming age for sexual intercourse, when this was determined by the appearance of the pubes, whether of the female or of the male. There had been a pre-Teutonic period of promiscuity, I should say, in which there was no regulated intercourse of sexes, no marriage by the group or of one half the group with the other half. At that time, or in the pre-Evid state, the earth as yet was undivided into south and north. The mythical cow was not yet cut in twain, or the mother separated into the 2 women. Much is told us by tradition, if we can but interpret it truly. It says the race of beings were not then divided, and had but one leg to go or stand on, meaning there was but one stock. All the earth in later phases being of one blood and of one language. The sexes were not yet divided by the lizard, as female puberty was quaintly figured. There was no cutting of the male or opening of the female with the fire stick or the stone knife by which the sexes were divided or made, or in the latter phases what we call, quote, created, end quote, into men and women. These were the Inapiritatua, end quote, being in the Alcachera Inga, who preceded women and men and were pre-Totemic. These were the unopened or the uncircumcised, who had to be transformed into women and men by cutting and opening. That is by introcision and circumcision or subcision, by which they were made into women and men in becoming Ptolemaic. Dancing then was a dramatic mode of rendering the mysteries of primitive knowledge in visible sign language with the Tish-speaking people, Safa, end quote. The name of the priest signifies the, quote, the dancing man, end quote. The African al-Holi in their dances, says Sir H. Johnson, imitate animals, quote, most elaborately, end quote. An African potentate has been known to dance for some 10 to 15 minutes together in receiving and distinguishing European visitor like Richard Burton before he had represented all his own titles of honor and claims to admiration in the language of dance and gesture signs. With the Bedouins, each totem had its own special dance, and when they want to know the clan to which a stranger may belong, they will ask, quote, "What dance do you want? What dance do you dance?" End quote, as an equivalent for the question, "What clan do you belong?" End quote. These dances are continued in the initiative ceremonies of totemism. They tend to show that the shapes and sounds and movements of the totem animals were imitated in the primitive, that is, pantomime, by way of proclaiming the clan to which the particular group belonged. The totem type was thus figured to be in sight of gesture language before it could be known by name. Admission into the Dakota clan was affected by means of the great medicine dance. The medicine men of the Arakukus have 4 dances which are sacred to themselves, no other person being allowed to dance these mysteries. The first is the eagle dance, end quote. The second is called, quote, the dark dance, that is performed in the dark. The other 2 are the pantomime dance, end quote, and the witches dance, end quotes. This is actually done in the midst of the Agros Bureau of Ethnology second annual report in 1880 and 1881. So this is over 100 years ago, actually 150 years ago, page 116. So they're already taking notes, these people are. The eagle being the bird of light, the sunbird, we may have heard that the first 2 dances told the story of the beginning with light and darkness, which was thus rendered in gesture language and continued to be memorized in the fashion by those who dance such primitive mysteries. We also learn from the sacred dance of the Aborigines in the character of the bear, the wolf, the seal, the crab, or other animals that the gesture language included in imitation of the Teutonic or Totemic Sioux type. The Mandan Indians danced the, quote, buffalo dance, the heads of the dancers being covered with a mask made of the buffalo head and horns, and other dances of the dog and bear totems. The dancers acted in the character of the animals. The llamas of Tibet dance the old year out and the new year in while wearing their animal masks. The snake dance is still performed by the Moquik Indians of Arizona. This is from Borg. Quote, name of the book is Snake Dance of the Moquis, page 116. And also among the Australian Aborigines, when they, quote, make the snake, end quote, in their sacred possession of the mysteries. It was a common totalitarian custom for the brothers and sisters to perform their commemorative ceremonies of mystery in the likeness of totemic animals. In the Australian rites of initiation, the teachings and moral lessons are conveyed in object lesson pantomimically displayed. The various totems are indicated by the language of gestures. The, quote, rock wallabies, end quote, are initiated by jumping with the knees slightly bent and the legs kept wide open. The kangaroos hop about in the likeness of the totem animals. The howling of a pack of dingoes or wild dogs are heard afar off, as if in the depth of the forest. The sounds grow less and less distinct. At length, the leader of the band rushes in on all fours, followed by the others. They run after each other on all fours round the fire, imitating the actions of wild dogs in the dingo dance. It's based upon A.W. Howland of some Australian ceremonies of initiation. When the Inuits at their religious fetes and anniversaries of the dead, the biographies of the departed are told to the spectators in dumb show and dancing. With the Kaya Hyenas of northern Burma, it is the custom to dance the ghost out of the house at the time of the funeral. The Egyptian mourners also accompany the men's on the way to Amento with song and dance, as may be seen in the Visionaries of the Book of the Dead, where the text deals with the mysteries of the resurrection. The same mystery is expressed in the black fellow jumping up the white fellow when he rises from the dead. It used to be the, quote, custom in Scotland for dancing to be kept up all night long after a funeral. This is from the Pier, Folklore of West Scotland, page 66. not as a desire of getting rid of the spirit, but as an act of rejoicing and dancing the resurrection of the spirit. The onlookers often wonder why the performers in Gaelic and Celtic dances should, when furiously dancing, give forth such inhuman shouts and shrills, blood-curdling cries. But there is nothing liker than that these are remains of the languages of animals, end quote, and a survival of the primitive totems practices. Leaping in the air with a shout while dancing had a special dramatic significance. What this was may be inferred from the Egyptian funeral scenes. That which had survived at the dance of death in the Middle Ages was the earlier dance of the resurrection, or the rising again from the dead. The dancing occurred in the presence of the mummy when this had been raised to the feet and set on end, which is then a figure of the rising dead. The rising again was likewise imitated in the dance. Hence, the women who are seen to be jumping with curious contortions on some of the bas reliefs are acting the resurrection. It is their duty and delight to, quote, dance that dance, end quote, for the departed, that is, papeless of Anna, end quote. Thus, sign language, totemism, and mythology were not merely modes of representation. They were also the primitive means of preserving the human experience in the remoter past, which they could be no written record. They constitute the records of prehistorical times. The most primitive customs, ceremonial rites, and revels, together with the religious mysteries, originated at the means of keeping the unwritten past of the race in ever-living memory by preventing repetition of the facts, which had to be acted from generation to generation in order that the knowledge might become hereditary. This is a thesis which can be fully proved and permanently established before ever a folk tale was told or a legend related to in what we call verbal speech. The acting of the subject matter had begun. The dance being one of the earliest modes of primitive sign language, not trailing clouds of glory, end quote. Have we come from any state of perfection as falling angels in disguise with the triumphs of attainment all behind us? But as animals emerging from the animal, wearing the skins of animals, uttering the cries of animals, while it's developing our own, and thus the nascent race has traveled along the course of human evolution with the germ of immortal possibilities in it, darkly struggling for the light and growing sense of the road being uphill, therefore difficult and not to be made easy like the downward way in nothingness and everlasting death. It is now quite certain that speech was preceded by a language of animal cries, accompanied by human gestures, because, like the language of the clickers, it is yet extant with the Aborigines, among whom the language makers may yet be heard and seen to work in the pre-human way. The earliest human language, we repeat, consisted of gesture signs which were accompanied with a few appropriate sounds, some of which were traceable and continued from the predecessors of man. A sketch from life in the camp of the Mashones, Mashone, Chief Lo Bengidla, made by Bertram Medford, may be quoted much to the present purpose. Quote, he comes, the line, and they roar. Behold him, the bull, the black calf of Mad Yo Vane. And as this they hollow, or I should say bellow, He is the eagle which preys upon the world. Here they scream as each imitated shout was taken up by the armed regiment, going through each conceivable form of animal voice, the growling of leopards, the hissing of serpents, even to the sonorous croak of the bullfrog. The result was indescribably terrific and deafening, end quote. This is from The Triumph of Hilar Blashland by Bertrand Milford, page 28. In this sign language, which was earlier than words, the red men acted their wants and wishes in expression, pantomime, while wearing the skins of the animals that were pursued for food. They, quote, laid their case, end quote, as it were before the powers previously to the hunt. Each hunt had its special dance, which consisted in the imitation of the motions, habits, and cries of animals to be hunted. They climbed like bears, built like beavers, gallop about like buffaloes, leap like rows and yell like foxes. This is from Shada Bryan, Voyages in America, page 142. Travelers have detected a likeness between the scream of the prairie dog and the screech of the Apache Indians, who will imitate the animal so perfectly as to make it respond to them from the distance. On the night of the lunar festival, when waiting for the moon to rise, they would invoke her light with a concert of cries from their brethren of the animal world, which included the neighboring of the horse, the whining of the mule, the braying of the ass, the screech of the coyote, the call of the hyena, the growl of the grizzly bear, when the Titanium orchestra performs its nocturnal overture in the language of the animals. The Zuni Inuit Indians, in their religious service, initiated the cries of the beast, which are imagined as they FETISHISM in ceremonial rites of the Council of FETISHISM. They sing a very long hymn or prayer chant, and as the close of each stanza, the chorus consists of the cries which represents their deities, called the prey gods, P-R-E-Y, in the guise of their totem animals. Hall, in his work called Life, quote, Life with the Eskimaks, end quote, tells us how the Inuits looked up to the bear as a superior to themselves in hunting the seal, because as they say, quote, the bear, quote, talks sealish, end quote, and can lull the animal to slumber with his incarnation. The Inuits have learned the secret of ruin and repeat his language all they can to fascinate the coy and magically overcome the seal and capture it, but they are still beaten by the bear. Dr. Franz Boas has recently discovered the remains of a very primitive tribe in Aborigines near the boundary between Alaska and British Columbia. They are called the Sunsoul and are hunted to death by the Indians like wild beasts. They formerly consist of two clans that originally observed the ancient law of Totemic communalism, no women being allowed to marry within her own clan. At present, there is but one clan in existence, and the men in this clan have been forced to seek for wives among the Indians of the Nass River. These Zolians, so apparently talk in bird language. They cheep and chirp up or whistle in the speech with a great variety of notes. The Supreme Spirit, Tharamolian, who taught the Merian tribes whatever arts they knew and instituted the ceremonies to initiate for young man making, is said to have ordered the names of animals to be assumed by men. Howitt, quote, on some Australian beliefs, end quote, before the names could be assumed. However, the animals were adopted for totems, and the earliest names were more or less the cries and calls of the living totems. The mothers would be known by their making the cry of their totem animal, to which their children responded in the same pre-human language. The sow say is the mother. The children are her pigs. The mother would call her children as a sow, and the children would try to repeat the same sounds in response. The totem lioness would call her kittens by purring, and the cubs would respond by purring back. The hippopotamian, this the lions and other loud roarers, would grow terribly with the sounds they made in striking dread into the children. When as yet they had no names nor any art of tattooing the totem figures on the flesh of their own bodies, brothers and sisters had to demonstrate who they were and to which group they belonged by acting the character of a zootype in the best way they could by crying or calling or lowing or grunting or puffing and posturing like the animals in their primitive pantomime or bow masque. Thus, the sign to the eye and the sound to the ear were continually para passu in the dual development of sign language that was both visible and vocal in the same time, when the brothers and sisters were identifying themselves not with nor as the animals, but by means of them and by making use of them as zootypes for their totem. The cliques of the pygmies, the San, the Bushmen, the Kala, that is Hottentots, and the Kaffins, constitute a living link betwixt the human beginner and his predecessor, the ape. The Bushmen possessed about the same number of clicks as the cynocephalus or dog-headed ape. The monkey mother also menstruates. Another link betwixt the ape and the human female. The clickers born of her as a blood mother would be known by their sounds as monkey men. Tal Anna is a totemist monkey man raised to the status of a divinity in Egypt. Hanuman is the same in India, where the Jawas of Raputina claim to be the descendants of the monkey god, and the ape men initiating the cyclocephalus would be on the way to becoming the human clickers. Very naturally, naming by words would follow the specializing by means of the totem type, or as we would have, tree the type, and tree the name, bull the type, and bull the name, dove the type, and dove the name, lynx the type, and lynx the name. The instance in supplying by Frederick Bonnet in his work called, in his notes, I should say, on the customs of River Darling Aborigines in New South Wales, which is also to the point. He observed that the children are named after animals, birds, and reptiles, and the name is a word in their language meaning the movement or habit of one of them. That is in Journey Anthrope Institute. That is in May of 1883. The cell may be added. The totem say is a animal. First it was a figure, and from this a name was afterwards drawn, which at times and probably at first was the voice of the animal. The earliest formation of human society, which can be distinguished from the gregarious horde with its general proximity of intercourse between the sexes, is now beginning to be known by the name of totemism, a word only heard the other day, yet nothing later than the totem state of sociology is fundamentally enough as ground to go upon is discussing sound language, mythology, and fetishism, or in tracing the rootlets of religion, and the study of the subject has but just commenced. It has been omitted with all its correlators and implications from previous considerations and teachings concerning the prehistorical past and present status of the scattered human family. On this line of research, the inquiries and explorations which go back to this tangible beginning are now the only profitable studies. The result of these alone can be permanent. All the rest was tentative and transitorial. But, quote, no satisfactory explanation of the origins of totemism has yet been given, end quote. So said the writer of the book on the subject, that is J.G. Fraser, called Totemism, end quote. The author of Primitive Marriage, end quote, who first moved the subject in England, could make nothing of it in the end, according to his brother, in a reference to the, quote, patriarchat, end quote. Lenin gave up his hypothesis and ceased to have any definite view of all the origins of totemism. Nevertheless, Lenin was right in his guess that the, quote, so-called, quote, animal worship of the Egyptians was descended from a system of totems or fetishes. From Budge's work, The Gods of the Egyptians, Volume 1, page 29, through worship, end quote, we protest again and again is not the word to employ. In this connection is but a modern counterfeit. The totem in its religious phase was as much the sign of the goddess or the god as it had been of the motherhood or brotherhood. It was an image of the superhuman power. Thus, the Mother Earth, as giver of water, was imagined by the fish or papas. Shoot, these, so to say, were totems of the natural power. But when it came to, quote, worship, end quote, it was the powers that were the objects of supreme regard, not the totems by means of which the powers were represented, not the water cow, not the goose, the fish, the shoot, but the goddess Ak and the goddess Set and Sebet and child Horus. It is in the most primitive customs that we must seek for his fundamental forms of rites and ceremonies. It is in totemism only that we can trace the natural genius of various doctrines and dogmas that have survived to be looked upon as divine revelation, especially vouchsafed to later times in consequence of this, there having been continued as religious mysteries without the guidance of the primitive gnosis. The human past in the remote range might be divided into two portions, the purpose and described as pre-totem and totem. The first was naturally a state of proximity, more or less like that of the animals, when there were neither totems nor law or taboo, nor covenant or blood, nor verbal means of distinguishing one person from another. The only known representative of this condition now living are the pygmies of the Central African forest. By totemism, we mean the earliest formation of society in which the human group was first discrete from the gregarious horde that groveled together previously in animal proximity. The subject, however, has various aspects. The term has many meanings which have to be determined by their types. Many years ago, the present writer sought to show that totemism, mythology, and FETISHISM, and the hieroglyphic version system did not originate in separate systems of thought and expression as any modernism set up for itself, but that these had a common rootage in sign language, of which they were various modes of forms. And we're going to stop here at this point. And we'll come back to this later. This is book 2, Gerald Massey's work here, simply called find here, the ancient Egypt, the light of the world. So thank you for being here. Again, today is the 3rd day of March 2024, and I appreciate you listening with me, as these guys have done quite a bit of, he has done quite a bit of knowledge here, not knowledge, but researching, I should say, of all this information in the past. You'll notice that a lot of these quotes are from the 1880s and early, even 1850s and 60s, but still pertinent for today. Thank you for being here, and I wish you a good day. You take care.